I can call the meeting to order. Let's see, public comment. Have any public comment? I don't think any public. Okay, let's see, approval of the January 16 meeting agenda. Already had a chance to see that. Okay, a motion.
Motion to approve the meeting agenda. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Okay. And the November 22nd, 21st meeting minutes. Take a motion on that to approve those.
Have
Have a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
And let's see here, board member reports. Any board member reports today?
Well, I'll just share what I have
Right.
started for you. So I will be going to, I've been committed by North Carolina Association of County Commissioners to the Ag Steering Committee. I'm also on to the Environment Steering Committee. So I'll be going to both of those meetings this Friday. And what I was asking folks, if there was anything that you knew of around state policy, anything that could help us. And so we were just talking about the need for engineers, because that's been a really big holdup on our soil and water project. So Ariel's going to get with Anthony Dowell and have him send me more information on that. And I'm going to share that with the steering committee. If anybody else has anything that's on their mind around specific kind of policy that could help. Because this group is county commissioners from across the state.
Mhm.
So we come together to then advocate for policies at our, across all the counties, and then we select a legislative agenda that then we put forward as the North Carolina Association of County Commissioners.
Mhm.
So if there's something, that we can get to that level, then we have more likelihood of getting some changes when we have the counties all across the state pushing for the same thing.
Yeah.
So if there's something that you think of, just shoot me an email or give me a call. I have that meeting Friday morning.
Sounds like the engineering one is a really practical way of something that just needs funding. That should be an easy decision, hopefully, for decision makers. Yeah.
Yes, and I will advocate for that.
Thanks, Terry.
Okay, you're welcome.
Anything else? Any other board member reports? Mark, the meeting that you mentioned, the airstrip,
Oh, yeah.
did we?
Do you want to mention anything on that? You don't have to, please.
Oh, no, we were scheduled for 10 January to hear that special use permit.
Mhm.
That's gotten delayed till 14 February. This one
Okay.
works in our favor. It gives us more time. I have applied for legal standing. I've contacted the Federal Aviation Administration, NCDOT Aviation Division. And the bottom line is, even though those two organizations are in the chain to approve this, they don't enforce anything. It's totally up to local ordinances and local authorities to see that everything is complied with.
Mhm.
So it's all in the hands of the Board of Adjustments. The problem is that was a real eye opener when I went to the 10 January meeting. It's what they call a quasi-legal hearings. There's lawyers, expert witnesses, testimony given. It's quite an ordeal. And I'm not sure, me standing up there saying these things might scare my cows, hold much weight. But what I'm looking at now, I'm looking at more and more that I want to know about airport and air runway design. And I really have questions about whether or not this can be safely operated, because there's a power pole which is not documented at one end, south end of the runway. But there's no one that's done any site visits. I don't know if the board is responsible for looking into that, but I plan to bring it up, but I'm not sure how. But that's the bottom line: is it really suitable for an airstrip?
Probably one of those things that would just go ahead unless there was anyone contesting it, right? I mean,
Yeah.
is it real controversial out there, or is it just?
There's a large community support against it,
Oh,
but the bottom line is, if there's no, this is a legal hearing, so if there's no legality involved,
Yeah.
Opinion doesn't matter.
right.
They've stated that so many times, it's gotta be some valid legal reason not to do it.
Yeah. Well,
And the only
thanks.
thing I can think of is conformity and safety issue.
Yeah.
But there's no authority that's gonna enforce that.
So you said the power pole, is it,
There's a power pole that sits up on a 10 to 12 foot bank from the south end of the runway that is no more than 100 feet from the end of the runway. So the south end of the runway is practically not usable. And the FAA recommendations, which, like I said, they don't enforce, but the FAA approval is conditional based upon the fact that trees were cleared, which is on my land and partially on another conserved piece of land. And the trees were being cleared, but it didn't, since they used Google Earth, they didn't see the power pole and the power line. So that end of the runway is pretty much boxed in power lines.
and it's a working power?
Oh, yeah, that's our main line.
It's Duke,
It's not Duke, it's French Broad.
okay.
And
just-
I haven't
did they
called
hear
them yet.
anyone?
I haven't called them yet. But I know they're aware of the strip because they added the balls on the lines at the other end, which was also part of the FAA recommendation. So that end, the north end is taken care of. Not the south end.
Is this where that little plane is sitting in the field right now?
I'm not sure whose that is.
Okay.
That's the Wells property, but I'm
Yeah,
not
that's a
sure.
different
Yeah,
property.
Okay.
yeah. But what happened was he bought a 2.1 acre strip of land in the middle of that hayfield.
Hmm.
That's what he's using. And part of the FAA recommendations say that ideally landowners should have all the land so they can make sure they have a non-obstructive glide path in. But that's not the case
The
here.
2.5 acres seems pretty small.
It is, it absolutely is. And there's discrepancies on the runway length because, I mean, there's a lot involved in setting the runways and finding out. There's threshold lengths, there's actual practical runway length use that you can actually use depending upon the angle of the glide that you come in on.
Mhm.
But no one's looking at that.
Some of the big airports are huge. I mean, Dallas Fort Worth is
Oh, yeah.
17, 20 square miles or
Yeah.
something like that. I don't know if that's correct, but it's multiple square miles, huge. No. Well, thanks, Mark. Appreciate that. And thanks for keeping us updated if you stay plugged into that. Okay, let's see, board terms. You guys want to lead a discussion on board terms?
Yeah, so we have, David Lee and Ed, positions that are nearing their end in February. And so, Stacy Woody has posted 2 vacancies, and
He has already done that.
yes,
Just
just
for
the
their
2.
two positions, not for your position.
Okay.
I'm still waiting on clarification.
Yes, yeah, she said initially she said both yours and Susie's positions, you can be reappointed for them. But then we wanted to clarify and let her know that you're a board member, not a liaison. To the commissions, or, yeah, you're not a liaison, and so she's double checking to see if you can still be reappointed. But she did say Susie's position, she can be right.
And it's also just based on your own interests, if
Right.
you want, your decision. And then if, she says that you're not able to be reappointed, you could be placed as the commissioner liaison on the board. And,
Or just ex officio.
or ex officio, but I think potentially if you're a commissioner liaison, you can still vote maybe, and ex officio, not allowed to vote.
I don't
We'll have to-
know.
I'll just Yeah, we'll have to figure out the specifics, and then if that was the case, then we'd be able to appoint another board member. So you just let us know, what would be best for you, and then we'll let you know when we hear back confirmation from Stacy and Lamar.
Yeah, I want you to talk to them today when we have commission meetings.
Okay, perfect.
So with David and Ed, one of those is a specific one
Yes.
to the southwest Camler
Yeah.
area, that's probably David Lee's.
So they're both actually in that southwest,
Okay.
but we only need, our ordinance states we only have to have one.
Okay.
So one we've posted specifically to the southwest, so that's like Hominy, Arden area. And then the other, we've allowed in the posting for it to be open to any region.
Okay,
And we have already received one application for interest for the board, and it's he applied, I guess maybe back in the spring when we had another vacancy.
oh, what's his name?
Kyle,
Oh, good, cause I was gonna mention that to him, cause I remember he had applied, but it wasn't the right fit for.
so he could potentially, I got the applications that had been submitted of the last time
Okay,
and reached out to them, letting them know that we had the opening. So he has submitted, and one other person is planning to submit but hasn't. I don't know if she would fit that region, but anyway, so Kyle has
His will be open area.
his would be the open area,
See
yeah.
that, so we definitely need to reach out, if anybody knows anyone in that southwest, Candler, Hominy, a farmer out that way, Arden, we need a representative from that area.
So the board can decide if they wanna go ahead and wait, for other people to apply and then recommend, the filling of both positions, or if you want to, recommend Kyle for that open position.
Can we send it out so everybody can look at the application, his application?
I have not sent it out to the board, no.
I think everybody will need to have a look at that first before
Okay,
making a recommendation.
sounds good.
So can those two attend meetings until that's done, or are they,
Can they attend meetings until they're,
until someone else is appointed? Is that-
Yes.
Yeah,
they're just-
yes. but David has said that he's gonna be out of town for the next, really like 2 months.
Yeah.
And so then his term will have expired, so I think he's essentially resigned or, off the board.
And Ed's
And
wife,
Ed,
it's hard for him to.
It's
do
just
this.
day by day for how he can attend, so. So I don't expect them to probably attend in the next couple months, but
Yeah.
if they do, they're definitely allowed to. So yeah. If you find folks in those regions, or that might just be a good fit, you can either send them to the county website, board's website, or send them to us and we can send them that info.
What is Kyle's lesson?
I don't know how to
Well,
pronounce it,
it's
it's
okay.
like GUI or something, it's GUI.
That's right, okay.
Um,
Well, when you send it out, we'll see. it.
yeah,
Okay, thank you.
yeah, so that's generally the update there.
Okay, so no action we need to take on that right now. Okay, 2024 board meeting calendar approval.
Yeah, so in the packet and on the screen are the proposed meeting dates. It's still the third Tuesday of every month, but we vote on these dates at the beginning of the year, and then we can post them on the website so that the public knows the agreed upon meeting dates. So you can decide, on these dates today, and if we do need to vote on them. The other thing I'll mention is that LCAB, the other board that we work with, they have a couple dates a year that they decide not to meet because of busyness, sometimes that helps, and one of those dates is December. So sometimes they're like, holidays are crazy, this is right the week before Christmas, and they aren't able to make a quorum, and so they decide just to not have that meeting. Not saying you guys should do that, but that is an option that other boards do.
And just because we had to cancel it this year anyway, typically you don't have anything that you need us to make a decision on or vote on in December, right? That doesn't mess up with any of your grants.
It doesn't, we always have to do those beforehand, because
Okay.
they're usually due before that meeting anyways.
I'll make a motion that we approve the proposed calendar minus the December 17th date.
So then do we need a second?
Yes.
Is November 19th, is that Thanksgiving week?
Well,
Probably
it's my birthday, so. Just kidding. You can vote ahead of time to adjust that date, let me take a look.
Okay, let's take a look, and I could rescind and change my motion.
Well, let's see.
No, no.
It's-
I think it is. I think it's gonna be a late Thanksgiving this year.
Okay,
Well, isn't it always the fourth Thursday?
yeah,
So the 22nd of November
Yeah.
will be Thanksgiving. So it is the week of Thanksgiving.
Oh, wait a minute.
No.
No, it's 20, it would be 20.
Or the 21st, yeah, I was looking at Friday.
Yeah, so it's gonna.
Oh,
be-
you're right, you're right.
Thanksgiving would be the 28th.
Hey,
Cool.
28th.
Yeah,
Yes, we do.
That's-
okay,
so
so
we're
that's
good.
maybe.
Okay, so I will leave my motion, it stands.
And we had a second from Ann, is that
Yeah.
right? Okay. Any other discussion on that? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, motion carries. All those dates minus December. And let's see, moving on to applications for VAD and EVAD. Avni.
Alright, so we have a couple, the Snelson and DS tract are just moving from VAD into VAD. Make them eligible for possible work with Anthony if needed. And then the Worley Light Center and Tempest Renatus tracts are all new VAD applications. I think some of them are working with land trusts to try and get easements on the property, so this just helps their ranking and gets them in the back. And so the total the EVAD totals will change and the VAD totals, but some of the numbers, the total only changes because of the 3 new VAD tracts. The EVAD totals increase because we're moving the VAD acreages into EVAD. So minusing some of the 2 of the EVAD properties from the VAD program and moving them into EVAD.
So there's a little bit of a weird
Yeah.
shift around.
Yeah, so there's some change, there's a little bit of change in the acreages because we're shifting 2 properties from VAD program into EVAD and then adding 3 VAD properties. But that's all listed there if you wanna take a closer look.
And both, and the Snelson and the Diaz properties are in easement as well.
And you said some of the other properties are working on easement,
Yes, or yeah,
or applying,
right.
With, with serving Carolina.
oh, okay.
2 of them, the Tempest Renatus and Light Center, and the Worley is just for that applicant.
The Light Center,
Yes.
interesting.
Yeah.
Went there, I don't know, a billion years ago with
Yeah.
Warren
Oh,
Wilson
yeah.
freshman seminar.
What did they do out there?
It was Fred Solomon. He was a math professor at the college and I remember we went in this room and it was a light therapy thing. And they changed the colors and the first light came on and I just burst out laughing because we were all sitting around and they changed the colors and we just sat there and laughed until we cried for half an hour. But,
It's like therapy?
it's a new age type place. That was just like one of the features.
What? They have like a dome. and
Yeah,
then
yeah,
you
it's-
get there, and they have like a meditation room at the top. And they actually have like part of their properties open to the public if they want to like hike down to the stream. And then part of it is leased out to a farmer for hay, I think.
See, that's the kind of place that I don't know if we will be able to like identify those tracks as being open to the public through the, through the new recreation master plan. Like some places are so hidden, like, how do we know that?
Nobody
it's open
knows
to the
about the
public,
lights.
we wanna be able to inventory all of our public resources for recreation, but that,
Yeah.
I would have known unless you had talked about it.
Yeah.
Purple carpet and all, they still.
Yeah,
They go
yep,
with a lot, okay,
yeah.
I remember it. Excellent.
Okay, motion to approve the VAD and EVAD.
Do I need to recuse myself?
Yes.
Yes.
And wait a second.
Second,
Leanne, all in favor of approving that event?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries, thank you. And let's see, farmland preservation forest area.
Alrighty. Well, we missed our December meetings, we have a bit to update on. Right now, we are kind of hoping that January can be a bit of a catch up with some of the VAD renewals and removals. We usually do this around January, February of every year, so that's something we're starting to work on right now. Just basically looking at how, if whose 10-year agreement is up, so we'll be reaching out and doing that. We're also taking a bit of time to reflect on all the successes and challenges of the last year. And so Avni and I and our director Jennifer have scheduled a few days this month to do what we're calling our Farmland Preservation Program retreat, where retreat is not sure the right word. It's not, but it's, it's like work days.
Yeah.
Where we are looking through the things we've learned, the challenges, the successes, and trying to restructure some things so that hopefully that'll improve the overall work that we're doing. So so we had our first one on Friday, it was super successful, we have lots of great stuff that came of it, and we have a couple more coming. So these are things like, you know, figuring out how do we make you know, start giving the better estimates to landowners, how do we figure out these title issues up front rather than, you know, right before closing. Those are kind of some things that we're figuring out, and you know, how do we provide great information to landowners throughout the process, but not overwhelm them at any step. But you know, yeah, so that's kind of just a sneak peek at some of the things we're working on. So
How to grow sustainably.
yes, how to grow sustainably is the other big piece. We're doing really great in our conservation goal at this stage. And so we're able to, not that we, you know, don't want to continue to do a lot of amazing easement projects, but how do we plan for sustainable growth and make sure we're able to, you know, maintain what we have going on. So that's just a few bits there. Some of our easement project updates, we are in the final stages. Well, I should say, we closed the Joe Ramsey easement. Yeah, December 19th or so, right before the holidays, so that's super exciting. Happy Joe. And happy us, I'll say. So that's a big win for sure. So and then we have the Larson and Wesley easements are both in the very final stages of edits, and we should be scheduling closing in the next couple months, I would say. So that's two more donation easements that will be closed. We're in a better place with the Southern Appalachian Community Farm expansion. We have decided between county legal and Southern Appalachian's advisors that the best way to move forward is just to exclude that small disputed area of the easement, because we've at this stage waited almost a year and a half for the landowner that is disputing that section of the easement to do something, and there's been no resolution. So either way, the plan is to exclude that disputed area. So now we're
What about in that disputed area? It's pretty small.
it's small. I don't have. It's definitely less than an acre.
Almost an acre.
Yeah. And so we're now waiting for them to tell us what that location is exactly, so that we can revise the survey, have that excluded, and then everything else is really in the final stages. So once that happens, we can close that too. And so yeah, we've applied for the additional funding for Schluter. We have just submitted all 4 baseline documents, all 4 deeds, all 4 exhibits for all the Jasper Wood easements, which is pretty heavy load, but we're excited. They're all in review. So hopefully that'll get us moving towards potentially a late spring closing for Jasper Wood. Splendor Valley easement is still in this, I guess, same kind of place that it has been for a while. The landowners were denied for refinance. So that kind of, you know, our plan was to refinance and be able to close. They were denied in the refinance. They said they plan to try to reapply, but that's not gonna happen for the next few months. Our contract extension, our current contract deadline is March, end of March. So at this stage, there's definitely no way we're gonna be able to make that end of contract deadline.
Is it
So
the state funding?
this is state and federal funding. So and this is we've already requested an extension on this. So to be able to keep the funding for these landowners, we'd have to request another extension. So that's like our, you know, that's like our safe plan at this stage. It's not a good situation. So it's unfortunate that this is kind of like what we would have found if we had done a title search up front, you know, those kinds of things that we're working through in our workday. So
We're hoping to be able to sit down with our attorney, the landowners and from their financial advisor. Not that we would be advising them for anything, but just explaining the process to their financial advisor so they understand it.
As like a last ditch effort with their
Yeah.
existing lender.
It seems like there's been kind of not telephone, but maybe some things not explained properly that we feel like our attorney could explain. And then ultimately they'd still make the decision on their own, but yeah, it seems like there's maybe some misunderstanding or miscommunication somewhere.
Yeah, so the idea is that this is not a conventional lender, and so it's not like a bank, you know, that
It's an individual.
it's a private investor kind of thing, so. And all the information we've been relaying about the easement process and you know, explaining the appraisal and the subordination and all of that. Goes to the landowner sends it to their accountant, the accountant sends it to the investor. So it's our concern that like, we have not been given access to directly communicate with the, you know, lender. And so not everyone, most people don't understand the easement process, so if you're not necessarily able to, you know, we haven't been able to communicate directly with them, so in. Last I spoke with lenders, I basically said, is there a way we can schedule a meeting where we're all sitting down together, even if it's through Zoom, and we can clear up concerns?
Oh, you did speak with the lender directly?
Yeah, that's me proposing it, I would like this to happen. It has not been accepted or planned yet, but that, yeah. So,
Well, I mean, if the landowner seriously wants to do this, I mean,
yeah,
schedule a meeting.
right, exactly. So we're at the point where it's gonna have to be, you know, some harder talks of like. All right, do you actually want this? At this stage, do you want the easement to happen? We want the easement to happen, but we need to, you know, to troubleshoot this situation. We'll try our best to get the funding extended again, but ultimately, if the easement backs, if you know, this doesn't move forward. The landowner owes the county for all of the funding that we've spent on transaction costs, and that's, so like, you know. We want to reserve this money and close the easement. So that's obviously the best case scenario, but if it doesn't happen. The landowner is not only out of easement, but out of actually funds, so anyway, so it's complicated. We're we're trying to figure out exactly how to resolve it. So these kind of problems or, you know, issues that come down the line, these are the things we're talking through in our program, work days. It's like, you know, okay, how do we get this agreement up front? How do we, you know, have all these things disclosed up front? And maybe it isn't something we require before we even start the process to get, you know, like, yeah.
Legally, because we can ask landowners, do you have X, Y, Z on your property or any issues? And they could disclose and say to the best of our knowledge, no, but is it better for us to have like some preliminary legal work done? And so even if the landowner says, well, to the best of my knowledge, I didn't have anything, but then something does show up, we would know that because someone's done a title or like a preliminary title search.
So at least before we're applying for funds, is what
Mhm.
we're saying, before we're going to the state and federal, because I mean, when I think about the amount of time spent on this project,
So much time.
it's.
And not even just that, it's, yeah, the time of the
Yeah.
application, but then you've been waiting for this to be resolved for over a year now. And so that's a waste of our time.
Yeah.
It's a fantastic, you know, puzzle piece project, but we have to be aware of how we're spending taxpayer money on our, you know, for our time, so. So anywho, that's a bit of an update there. Sorry, I don't have better news, but the Clark easement is also a subordination agreement that we're waiting on, but there's a bit more of a hopeful outlook. They think that by March or April, they've been in communications with their bank. The bank is requiring them to do their own appraisal so that they can determine basically the value is gonna hold enough to pay off the loan and that type of thing. And then the bank hopes to agree to the subordination. So hopefully this spring we'll have a better plan for that. Worthing and Krekel and Soden are all finishing up the survey and we're hoping to start deed work soon. Can't remember if I mentioned this, but our conservation easement attorney that we've worked with for the past 2 decades or so is retiring. And so we're now having to find so we're having to find a replacement or two to be able to help with the easement process. So we're in the process of the county process of hiring a replacement or two for her. And so
Oh,
that's
Lynn Cox is
Lynn
retiring,
Cox,
not
yeah.
the county.
yes, correct. And so we're in the RFP process with the county. So that hopefully in the next couple of months, we'll have somebody hired, so then we could start some of these new projects and their deeds. We hope to request easement purchase from the bond for Parham and Fortner in February. That's, I believe, tentatively set for the February 6th meeting. It might be pushed back a little bit due to the LCAP project that's also coming to.
Are you gonna bring them both at the same time?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so the way that application or presentation would be structured is the open space bond manager Jill would do like an intro, and then I would do like a spiel on Parham, and then Michelle from Southern Appalachia would do her presentation on Lake Eden. So that's kind of the way we would have kind of the experts on the project there, rather than Jill doing it all. So and then we signed all of the newly funded NCDA applications, and we're starting the survey next week for both Rogers Tracts and the Fisher Tract. So we submitted all of our grant applications in December, so that was exciting. We hope to we also had site visits for the USDA applications that we submitted in December. And we hope to hear, there's a kind of an expedited timeline with the USDA funds. So we're hoping to hear sometime into January about those.
Okay, so the USDA ones you said were the visits.
Yes.
So remind me which two, one out in Fairview.
Yes, Okoboji, and then Russ Robertson.
And then Russ. Okay.
Yeah, so those are the two we did. We had actually already had the site visits.
We submitted for 2 pots.
Yes.
The regular USDA pot and then the IRA funding additional.
So even if we don't get, a positive answer in January, we might still have the option for funding in the other pot. So they're just breaking them at different times.
Okay. In the January, you're thinking?
That's the hope, yeah. And a couple other updates, I would say, that we wanted to share in December, but since we didn't have our meeting, we had a couple of our grant application farms get cold feet right before we submitted. So the Fair Acres farm out in Fairview, Deborah Nesbitt, we brought kind of that revised proposal to the November meeting. So she backed out right before we were about to submit her application
To the state.
to the state. Yeah, she was initially slated for the bond, and we revised it to the state. So we did not submit her application. And then similarly, Shady Place Farm, which was the Neil and Ava Morgan, they also backed out the last minute. So I think Nesbitt is pretty decided to not do it at this stage. We said, do you want to just put pause on the process and think about it? And it sounded more like she wanted to cancel that process. Shady Place, I'm not sure if they're completely out of the water. I think they're potentially still thinking about it. I just don't think they're necessarily ready at the moment. We've had one of our other Soil Water Board members reach out to them and talk through a bit of the process, and it sounds like they are still considering it. So just wanted to get that update. It is another piece of like the growing pains of, wanting to make our goals, conserve as much as we can, but also, making sure we're still at a pace of starting these projects that's good for landowners to make these permanent decisions. So what we're finding from these two experiences is that, we wanna start the conversation with landowners earlier so they have more time to, wrap their heads around, the process and make decisions before we're bringing it to the board. So I don't know if it's because we were starting, the process and going through the board approval process at the same time that they backed out, or if it was just not necessarily the right time for these families. So we're just figuring out
Especially with these two, they had come before, they had come to the board and to Ariel long before this year, so they were already familiar. And if they talked to Ariel multiple times, and if they still backed out even after those, checking back in after a couple of years.
So that's why I'm,
Yeah.
how could it be just the timing? It's not like either one of them's
Yeah.
rushed.
I was.
Yeah, agreed, and I think that honestly,
Sorry, go ahead.
well, I think that honestly, when they backed out was right after we shared the estimates of the value that we could bring.
Exactly,
And so
because,
Yeah.
I mean, and David Lee is good friends with them. And he had to have had conversations. I don't know why they were so surprised at the appraisal estimate.
Yeah.
That, I don't know, somehow, I guess before everything gets as far along as it did, make sure they know you're gonna get a low ball.
Yeah.
You've got to understand the whole process, it's gonna be a low ball. But because of that, here are the advantages, but I don't know why they didn't understand that.
I don't know either, and I think even though, and we looked back at emails of how our initial conversations years ago, kind of what we had given, ballpark estimates, and the appraisal was right in the middle of what we had given them. So I don't know. It was, right, exactly where, the amount, that we had estimated originally, so yeah, that part is I think people always expect more, maybe, or they want more, but it's really, it's ultimately, it can't be all about the number, it has to be about.
In general, I think it would still be good to start the process early. These two are kind of.
Well, I agree about starting the process early. I think that's great because people need time to think about that. They've got to talk to their families, all that. It's just that I was like, these two,
Yeah,
you have been having a conversation.
absolutely, they've been on the list for a while, especially the Nesbitt property, I mean, we had already gone through the process with her father 5, 6, 7 years ago, so yeah, it is part of the game, but yeah.
How does that impact us with our state rate? How many projects are we putting forward? Because those were two of the really big significant ones we were putting forward to the state.
Right, so we submitted 2 or 3. Slocum, Robertson. And there was a third one.
Yeah. I know.
Oh, somebody right out of the I think we submitted 3 to the state, but on top, is that right?
Yeah, I think it's, in terms of projects, we submitted 3. But then we also did the local agricultural growth zone and then extension or add additional funding for the Sluder.
Yeah, so we there was a different type of application where you could request for the additional funds. But the big thing that I hope gets funded this year, obviously our other applications, but they had the opportunity, and you shared this with us, the what they're calling the local agricultural growth zone grant. And so that is an opportunity to basically allow them to reserve a certain amount of money. We match it at the county level with the bond, and we're able to fund a wider variety of projects. Doesn't have to just fit in the very particular, requirements of the state grant. There's some basic requirements, but it'll allow us to have a greater access to a larger pot of money, and the review process is simpler. You don't have to send it back and forth to the grant as much, so So anywho, we applied for $2 million for the local agricultural growth zone, which is the max you could apply for. And then that would mean that we'd have to match it with the county bond funds, 2 million from the county bond funds. So that would give us 4 million to potentially do easement projects with, and the only stipulation there is that and this worked out perfectly with after finishing doing our all of our GIS work to identify those conservation focus areas with the comp plan, is that these funds have to be used in those conservation focus areas.
Okay.
Which is already the regions who are really, focusing.
And remind me what the state that fund is called, the 2 million.
Local agricultural growth zone.
Okay.
And yeah, so one of the requirements was you have to actually identify these agricultural zones, and we had already done, so that it worked out well. So who knows if we'll get it, but we threw our hat in the ring.
When will we find out?
Usually the state funded projects aren't until the summer, fall sometimes, so we shall see about that.
Who makes that decision on those? Is that through the Department of Ag that they're deciding?
I think it's through, yeah, I think the ADFT at advisory committee ultimately makes those decisions, and then I think Troxler is the final say.
Is the only stipulation that the farms have to be in those conservation zones?
That's the main stipulation. The other thing is they have to fit the PUB acreage requirements, so you couldn't do anything lower than that.
Okay.
And then I can send you the like 1 or 2 pager if you're interested to see the specifics on the program. Because it's the first year they're doing it, we've asked the state director several times general questions, and it seems like they're intentionally leaving it very open and flexible. And they don't even have some of the answers to the questions that we asked. But yeah, so I'll send you that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And going back and looking at the reasons why someone might back out of a conservation easement. Aside from the fact that the appraisals may be a bit low. Are there any really other motivators? Because unless they're in a PUV program and just out of the goodness of their heart, what's the real benefits to doing the easement? I mean, is that being communicated and?
Yeah, I mean, we're definitely trying to communicate that.
I'm not sure how you would do that though, if there's no,
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like you gotta say, okay, if you do this, this is how you're gonna be much better off.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, ultimately, it has to be one of the landowner's top objectives to wanting to protect the land. Like you can't, what we're seeing is, you don't just come in here and do this for the money, because it's, that's not, you would sell to a developer if that was the case.
Sometimes it's also, I guess, like if they share with their family or their financial advisor, and if they look at it from purely like their advisor looks at it from a purely financial standpoint, then the landowner might talk to the landowner and say, is this really the best idea, especially if they're younger, and say like, this is, your asset, you really have to responsibility now. And there are sometimes their kids might sway them one way or another.
So while we're like encouraging landowners, we want you to talk to your financial advisor, we want you to talk to your accountant and your spouse and family. Sometimes when that happens, while they're doing their steps in the due diligence, those are the steps that are sometimes talking them out of it. One thing we're thinking of doing is like, how do we maybe educate financial advisors and accountants on, what an easement is, the benefits, how they could potentially work with their landowners better. So we could do a workshop for that group of people specifically. And the other thing we were thinking of is working with either accountant or financial advisor and creating like 5 scenarios, example scenarios of how, you're getting a lump sum of money. And, that's what people really, they get really tunnel vision on, like, this is all I'm getting.
Right.
And instead of, them focusing just on this is all I'm getting, how can we work a few scenarios that we can show and explain, and they can, think through of like, okay, you're getting $500,000 once. you take that to a financial advisor, you invest that, and in 10 years, this is what that, that amount of money is doing for you, like, just showing kind of
And now you're,
opening their mind to the option, all the possibilities, and yeah.
now your PV and your property taxes will probably go down because it's restricted. All these like other smaller things that end up happening, or not smaller, but like all these other things that you don't see
The benefit.
outside of the lump sum.
So like, I'm just curious on those two specific cases that just pulled out, like, right? Financial advisor is what
Yeah.
happened with one, like. And I wonder, like, if you sat down, like, with, Deborah and the financial advisor, like, it sounds like. I wonder if that would help, because you're right, probably that financial advisor probably has no idea about this, and the same thing with the other family is probably the children.
Yeah.
Right?
It was a joke, yeah,
And so there's misinformation out there,
exactly.
right? And so unless we get that corrected, right? And so that's where it's like that continuing conversation. It's gotta happen, like, when they come back and say this, we're like, can you sit and say, well, do you wanna sit down? And we're happy to answer all the questions to make sure that your children or your financial advisor. I wonder if that could potentially help in those cases.
Yeah, I mean,
And I know you said that one of their children were, that he
Yeah.
reached out. And he's going through the process of his
Exactly.
able, so I'm sure, he was trying to make sure that the information was correct.
yeah, and I mean, and we absolutely are open to doing that, and we always offer to sit down and talk more. And then it gets to my, like, how much is too much? Like, like, there is a level of, okay, like, we cannot hold your hand forever to make it happen, but we will help as much as we can.
And we can provide like objective information, but we can't give information that's specific to their situation, because again, we have to draw a line and say, we're not your financial advisors, I can't give financial or legal advice.
Right.
And so after a certain point, it's like, we can tell you like this information, but you have to then like talk to someone else for your situations. So it's like maintaining that line to make sure we're not crossing into advice.
Yeah, or wasting time on a project that's not gonna go to fruition. I mean, we don't often think of that, but.
Or you could just get power of attorney and make all decisions for him.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, yeah, the other thing we kind of talked about with Anthony specifically is, offering, hey, here's a list of 4, easement landowners that we've worked with that have, been open and want to talk about this and offer that. And, if you're interested, reach out to one of them and see their personal experience, their personal opinion on, all of that. And sometimes that helps because it's a different voice, it's a different trusted, voice in the community. So that's another thing we thought about, we could offer.
I think that's a great idea. That's what Southern App does. I know since we did conservation, they used to send people to me that were thinking about doing it, and I was happy to do that and talk to them.
Yeah.
Go through the process, so I think that's a very good idea. Cause it's a big decision. It's a lot to think about, and if they can talk to somebody who's done it and who's been in it a few years, right?
Yeah.
So that they can be like, oh, the things that I was kind of concerned about didn't come, this person's not having to deal with those things. That didn't really happen. All those little things that kind of get out.
That you kind of spiral on.
Yeah, some of that misinformation, just to kind of help people feel more comfortable with something.
So if there was like an organized plan, 1 day or part day program, how many of those a year would you think would it take to reach the group where, a bunch of the principals are there and can facilitate discussions and breakouts or something,
Yeah.
I don't know, with 1 or 2 a year?
Yeah,
Make an impact.
Potentially, I mean. Yeah, we're just kind of like at the beginning of thinking of those things, but that was, I did a talk last year to a group of realtors. And it helped clear up a lot of questions about that and easements. So even like, starting with 1 or 2 a year is better than nothing, and really getting the the other thing that we've thought of is having like. In some of our handouts, like have a toolbox, like here is, I know at the county level, we can't recommend people, but we can have, you know, a dozen potential, you know, folks that work with this kind of stuff. So like, here are some accountants that have actual experience with easements. There's some financial advisors that have experience with easements, so that, you know. Maybe that's helping set them up for success as well, but yeah.
Well, in one sense, you know, that would be a big time commitment to do that, but time commitment to have all those little conversations inside
Oh,
too.
yeah,
So could be
exactly,
a good way to do it.
yeah, definitely. So yeah, those are just some of the growing pains we're figuring out right now, but we feel positive about it because it's helping us take a minute to kind of plan and figure out some of this stuff. So then one other thing I'll say, actually maybe two things. Tomorrow we're meeting with Dana from WC Communities, I think.
Yeah.
And we're starting to talk about creating like a workshop series for the farmers in Buncombe. Our focus, our hope for the focus is really kind of providing the tools and you know, options for farm transition planning or farmland succession planning. So we're starting that conversation. We can talk more about like what pieces you feel like needs to be in that. And we'll also put, you know, together some ideas for that. But I think that's not, you know, all happening this year. That's over the next few years, we would like to provide, you know, a series of workshops that's gonna educate the, you know, the community on all the options. And easements would be one of those workshops, but also estate planning, you know, all, you know, a variety of other things. So
Great.
that's something we're hoping to do. And then lastly, last week, me and I and Jess Lagus from Southern Appalachian did a community meeting out on Reams Creek at
Did you get that?
the church out there for Reams Creek.
Community center?
This was at the Reams Creek Beach Presbyterian Church.
Oh, at the church.
So there's a big community within that church that has farmland very close out in that area, and so we had a lot of land, let's say about 10 landowners show up. We each did a presentation and we just sat and answered a lot of questions.
Good.
So, and then that kind of sparked the idea of talking to the pastor out there of, you know, the church in a lot of rural communities is a trusted voice. And so is there a way we can do, you know, connect with some other rural churches out in our conservation focus areas and do these kinds of talks, and, you know, either to generate interest or just, you know, public awareness. So that's something we're thinking of.
That's great. I think the more education, information, so people can be well informed, right?
The new venues, that's good.
Yeah, exactly.
And that 10 landowners.
Yeah.
Okay, was great.
Yep, so I thought it worked well for both, for us and Southern Appalachian to be there together. You know, we work as partners, we're two different programs, we work as partners, and one isn't a good fit for us, it might be a good fit for them. So that was good.
Yeah, it also helped us to talk about like that or EVAD, especially EVAD for landowners that have big properties, but still want some kind of restrictions on their property. So it was a chance to talk about other options.
Yeah, because there were quite a few properties that were under like our minimum
Okay.
for easements. And Jeff also said that they wouldn't, you know, pursue an easement on that size of property, but EVAD was like, oh,
This is
we
your
still do
option.
have an option for
Yeah,
them,
that's true.
even if it's just every 10 years, so.
What's the minimum acreage that Southern App and we are typically?
15 is for us, Southern App says, you know, 15 is about what they would take to, but it also really just depends on the type of property. 15 acres of prime soils, yeah,
Yeah.
but you know, 15 acres, you know, with a different combination, potentially not. And also the acreage being a factor in our ranking, you know, we might entertain the idea of a 15-acre property, but it ultimately might not rank well because it's competing with other acreage, so yeah. But that's all I have for the update, there.
I just had one more comment when we're talking about benefits of the conservation program.
Mhm.
And I'm just trying to think of a way to say this without really offending everybody,
No.
but, and it's certainly not directed at you all.
Yeah.
But I don't really feel like I'm getting any support in my efforts with, protecting my conservation.
Mhm.
Even though maybe it's because our land's not directly impacted, but I mean, I feel like I'm on my own.
Yeah, I think if it, well,
Talking about the special use permit.
Yes, yeah, the airstrip, I mean,
yeah,
it's right there along the stream, it's right there, bordering us.
well, from my understanding, from the county side, it's that the ultimate decision isn't the best use of the land, it's what's allowed on the land. And of your neighbor's land,
Yeah.
not yours.
Yeah.
So because it's open use, my understanding is that the Board of Adjustment is just making the decision based on what is allowable on an open use piece of property. And so because there isn't, I guess,
Violation.
a violation specifically of the easement, because it's not happening on the easement land.
And we have to be neutral and.
Right, for easement holders, technically because it's not on the easement land, there's nothing we can technically do about it. With county, with us as county employees, we have to remain neutral, but and then the other side is if there was some type of like actual like
An infringement, right?
an infringement or
Or an easement,
Yeah.
on his property, because that's happened before, because somebody came in and logged some, like, an easement that someone held.
yes.
And so of course they got involved, so if there was some kind of infringement upon his easement,
Yes,
that would be.
that would
different.
definitely be different, like
That's what
if
we
he's
did
like,
with Nelson too, right in the
Yeah.
road, and so then the county did get involved.
Yes.
Or, yes, soil and water did get involved with that.
so if the terms of the deed, if there's like somebody, logs, encroaches on the boundary, builds something over on the boundary, or if he like, put those trees down on your property or something like that, that's where the easement, holder would be able to try to defend the easement. But because it is just an adjacent property and it's open, open use, there's not necessarily legal reason that we could defend it.
And the infringements haven't happened yet, too.
Right.
It's a challenge, it's a,
Yeah, and I think that the other problem with it being, because it's a quasi judicial hearing, it has to be like actual like provable evidence, against, like there's all kinds of public safety, public benefit, things that you could use to defend the use of not having an airstrip on that property, water quality, erosion, like all, it's public safety with power lines, all of those kinds of things, but how do you prove that?
Well, the FAA recommendation says the trees need to be cleared on the south end,
Mhm.
and that's conserved property.
Right,
So,
yeah, but then
that's a good
the question
example of
is,
something.
do they have to follow the recommendation?
well, that was what I was talking
Yeah.
about before, who's supposed to, see that those recommendations are carried out, no one's.
Yeah. Cause definitely can't make you cut.
Yeah, sure.
I definitely think that's a good point when you speak to bring all that up, right? It sounds as if there's been steps that haven't been looked at closely
Yeah,
with all that.
and is that something the planning department would review before? My understanding is that it's all happened already, the airstrip has been put in.
With
and this-
conditions,
With conditions, and this is just like them following the right procedure, but backwards.
yes, okay,
They were supposed to go and get permitted, this special use, and did not
Yes.
do.
yeah,
So now you've got to go through that process.
It's like a forgiveness process or something, I don't know, I'm not,
I'm just looking for legal guidance as far as, okay, this is the proper procedure for presentation of material, it's gotta be presented ahead of time, it says, it's all.
Is Lynn Cox still practicing at all?
Oh, that's a good one.
She
Be worth the
is,
consult.
Great.
yeah, she is, but she's almost retired. So I mean, she could probably give, I can give you her contact information. I don't know,
Some legal advice,
Yeah.
if you're in a quasi-legal.
Yeah.
This is quasi.
and I mean, she's not necessarily like, she'd be able to like represent you or.
But she might know a
But
good,
she might be able to send you in the direction of
Or
that.
answer some questions.
Yeah.
too.
But things to consider in your argument.
Mhm. Yeah, I'll send her your way, or you her way.
hopefully that'll open some doors and. Okay, I just wanna bring our attention to the time here. We have exceeded our time, so. We're gonna pay a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Okay.